So in just a couple of days, Apple will be releasing iOS 17.5 to the general public. And I've been running the software on this iPhone here, this 15 Pro Max. And as per usual, I like to compare the incoming update versus the current update. Again, same device, 15 Pro Max, as you can see right here. One is running 17.5 and the other is running the current 17.4.1, which is the latest release by Apple. Now the question is iOS 17.4.1 better than the incoming 17.5? We're going to be doing Wi-Fi tests, performance test. We're going to talk about the battery and everything else in between. So before you update, that way you have a better understanding if you should or not. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Now, before we begin with some of the testing, I wanted to make sure that you guys know there's a few bugs happening on both 17.5 and 17.4.1. And now there's one issue where some alarms just won't go off on iPhone. This is not specific to 17.5. However, it's still happening on the latest 17.5, and Apple has not addressed that. It is also happening on 17.4.1. So if you ever set an alarm and it doesn't go off, you're not alone. It is currently a bug, and Apple is set to be working on a fix. Apple has actually acknowledged that this issue is currently happening. Another thing I do want to mention has to do with battery health. Now, for some reason on my iPhone 15 Pro Max, ever since I've been testing 17.5 betas until this point, my battery health has taken a massive hit. So I had about 96% when I started testing 17.5, and it is now sitting at 92, and I haven't changed my habits. I've been using my iPhone as I normally would, so I've dropped a lot of battery health throughout the beta testing cycle with iOS 17.5. Now, I'm not saying that once you update, your battery health will drop a lot, but there's something that's happening that's running in the background that is causing my iPhone to actually drain quicker, and therefore I have to charge it more, and therefore the battery health tends to drop as more cycles, and I have to charge my battery more often. And now let's get to some of the testing. In terms of Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and everything else in between, performance, is iOS 17.5 actually better than 17.4.1? Let's begin with a simple Wi-Fi test. So let's start the testing with iOS 17.5. Both devices obviously connected to the same Wi-Fi network here in the studio, as you can see right there. This device on the left running 17.5. So let's begin the Wi-Fi test. So if you're having Wi-Fi issues with 17.4.1, will this fix the Wi-Fi connection issues or poor performance? Let's click go. Now the network here in the studio is capable of about 400 to 500 megabytes download depending on your device. Wirelessly, it can do anywhere from 100 to 300. So right now it looks like iOS 17.5 is nearly approaching 100, but not quite at the moment. So 93 on the download side. And when it comes to uploads, the network here in the studio can do anywhere from 10 to 15. So I'm not going to talk much about upload speeds because it's usually about 11 to 12 on every test that I do here in the studio. So yeah, upload speeds again, 11 to 12. We know that that's the case, 11.5. So that's iOS 17.5. Let's run 17.4.1. Again, same network, obviously. Let's see if the Wi-Fi is either better or worse on the current software versus 17.5, the incoming software. So right here we go, same network. Let's see what those numbers look like here. So right away, 17.4.1 is taking off at a good start. So anywhere from 150 to 156 on the download side, as you can see right there, outperforming 17.5. Now we're going to run a second test here to see what those numbers will look like. But in terms of uploads, as I mentioned before, 11.8 is not going to go any higher than about 13. I've always tested the upload size. So in terms of uploads, pretty similar. But in terms of downloads, 17.4.1 outperforming 17.5, as you can see right there. So let's run 17.5. One more test here to see what the numbers look like, and hopefully we can reach above 100 here on 17.5. So let's go ahead and see what those numbers look like. Actually started off really bad, as you can see right there, 13. So the performance of the Wi-Fi is pretty bad on 17.5, at least on this test right now. That is terrible numbers for this network. It should be over 100 easily. So 33.2. And we're not going to worry much about the upload size. It's going to be either 11 or 12. Not a big deal. So let's run the test on 17.4.1 for a second time here. And there are the numbers right there, final numbers. So let's go ahead and run the test on 17.4.1. Once again, I'm just going to do 2 tests just to make sure that things are running pretty good on the network. So it looks like 17.4.1 once again outperforming 17.5 when it comes to Wi-Fi download speeds, at least over 100, as you can see here on the network, same location, obviously. So we're not going to worry much about the upload side, but it definitely crushed 17.5. So 17.4.1 on these tests, as you just saw there, same network, different software updates, as you can see right here, 17.5 versus 17.4.1, 17.4.1 outperforming 17.5 on both tests. So if you were having Wi-Fi issues on iOS 17.4.1, at least based on these tests, 17.5 is not going to perform any better. Hopefully, if Apple was to address this, it would happen with 17.5.1 update later down the road. We'll have to wait and see what Apple will say if there's any Wi-Fi issues. But if you're having Wi-Fi issues, that will most likely continue to be the case with 17.5, unfortunately. So the next thing I want to look at is CPU performance. So raw performance on iOS 17.5 versus 17.4.1. If you were having any type of issues with speed and performance on your iPhone, is it any better on iOS 17.5 versus the current 17.4.1. Now, this test takes anywhere from 2 to 3 minutes, so obviously I'm not going to let you sit through the entire process here, but I'll be right back once we get the official numbers. Okay, so the test has completed. As you can see right here, iOS 17.5, single core score 2,955, iOS 17.4.1, single core 2,952. So not by much, but iOS 17.5 outperformed slightly, just very slightly, on the single core score department versus 17.4.1. Now the multi-core score is 7,199 versus 7,171. So again, a slight performance gain on iOS 17.5, but these numbers are just very minor to say that there's any performance gain from iOS 17.4.1 to 17.5. Now, one thing I want to talk about is battery life, because I know it's very important and I know a lot of you guys want to know. So as of right now, as iOS 17.5 currently sits on this device, the battery life has been terrible. It could be better. It is not better than 17.4.1. In my personal experience, every day I find myself charging my device at least twice before the end of the day because it gets so low, and my battery health has dropped a lot with 17.5. Again, your experience may be different, but battery life just isn't the best based on my testing throughout the beta cycles for iOS 17.5. And now that we're almost in the official release of the software, it has not improved just yet. So just stay tuned. iOS 17.5 will most likely become available this week on the week of the 6th. So in the next couple of days, Apple will be holding the event on May 7th. Of course, for the iPads, we'll most likely get iOS 17.5, the official release, or RC, and then a couple days later, the official release. So as it sits right now, should you update to iOS 17.5? My personal opinion is I would hold off for iOS 17.5.1, perhaps maybe down the road, where Apple will address the alarm issues that are not going off for certain iPhones, and these Wi-Fi connection issues that you just saw, and of course, the battery performance, which is probably most important. I would say with iOS 17.5, the battery life just isn't better than 17.4.1 based on my testing and my experience with the two softwares. So there you guys have it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and informed you in some way. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.